Welcome to The Other Side of Medicine, a trusted source for education, not medication, for 35 years. In every episode of The Other Side of Medicine, we deliver health information your doctor won't tell you about. My guests are the nation's leading health experts in science-based natural medicine, physicians, authors, researchers, and clinicians. We believe natural medicine should be first, drugs and surgery last, and so we promise to deliver you the next generation of health information built on three principles: common sense, science, and cooperation with nature. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Other Side of Medicine. I'm Dr. Christosik, and we're glad that you're spending time with us. We have a special guest with us tonight. It's Bob Jones from the farm in Sandusky, Ohio, as well as some other things he'll dive into. But Bob's got an interesting background. His family has been farming for a lot of years. He's been farming for over 40 years. Grew up on a family farm, and then there was a huge transformation that took place not too long ago. And I'll let Bob dive into that. But he was also a former student at Ohio State in the horticulture department, has a degree in horticulture. So Bob, welcome to The Other Side of Medicine.
Doc, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you this evening. The Chef's Garden is a family-owned and operated vegetable farm here in Huron, Ohio. My brother Lee and myself, we're very blessed to have 7 other members of the family farming with us. At peak season, we have about 180 folks on the farm. We're growing, shipping vegetables primarily to restaurants around the country. We ship to restaurants in all 50 states and 17 countries. We're also shipping to home direct to consumer in all 50 states. And we have an on-farm market here in Huron that operates 4 days a week during the winter and 5 days a week during the summer.
Yeah, so what do you do in your spare time?
Somebody asked me the other day, this is it's cold and snowy outside today. And this January is probably one of the busiest months because we do all of our planning in this month, because anything that you want to change on the planting schedule and in the management practices has to be done in the wintertime, because we're already seeding for outdoor vegetables now.
Sure. Well, Bob, I go back farming a little bit longer than you, actually. I actually was introduced to farming back in the 70s, and I was introduced by a gentleman named Al Couch, who's a professor at Hiram College, and he had a dairy farm, and he farmed traditional farming, used all the chemicals, and he was involved with the state agriculture department. And then he had an experience where he had a heart attack, and he got introduced to natural foods and natural healing, and he totally transformed his farm into a facility to educate people about how to use food as medicine. And he used to have these classes called Soil, Food, and Health. And ironically, well, maybe not ironically, fortuitously, I named this podcast Soil, Food, and Health tonight because in honor of him. He was a dear friend, very intelligent man, and he introduced me to the concept of the connection between soil, food, and health. And he influenced a lot of people around the United States. And he was very inspirational to me and a lot of other people. And I wouldn't be a doctor today if it wasn't for him. And so I'm thankful to him and thankful to people like you. So, Bob, I've got a question. I know that you believe that a healthy soil and healthy plants equal healthy people. Can you walk us through that chain of the health dynamics and how it impacts us, and how the food on our plate influences our health?
Well, we could probably start with looking at what's wrong with agriculture today. We tend to talk a lot about modern agriculture in the United States being broken both economically and agronomically. When we look at the health statistics and we look at the fact that so many people are either pre-chronic or in chronic disease state, and we look at the way that we grow food, it's very hard to make an argument that we should do more of what we're doing in modern agriculture. There was a study done in the UK back in 1991 that looked at the mineral density of about 20 different vegetables grown over a 50-year period from 1940 to 1991. And on average, all of those foods in that 50-year period lost on average about 40% of the nutrient density that they had in 1940. Protein was studied and they found the exact same things. So the animals that ate those plants also were declining in nutrient density. Now that study was done in 91. So we're now 25 years, 35 years past that. The only thing that has changed is that nutrient density is declining at an increasing rate. In other words, it's getting poorer and poorer all the time. There's a lot of work done now that looks at the biological activity in the soil or lack thereof, and how that is reacting synergistically to a plant. If you want healthy soils, you need healthy plants. A lot of people think of that the other way around. But when you get the synergy between the sun and the plant and the root exudates coming out of that plant, feeding the organisms in the soil, if they're present, then everything tends to work better. Someone told me the other day that the future of food is in the past. We used to grow healthy food and now we don't. And what we're trying to do is better understand what happens in the soil, what happens in that biological community, what happens in the rhizosphere around the roots of the plant, and understand how we positively impact that. It's very, very similar in plant health as it is in human health. A lot of things are perfectly lined up. The ideal ratios for minerals in the soil for healthy soil are exactly the same as ideal ratios of minerals in the human body. Now, it really sounds oversimplified to say that, but if a plant is healthy and we consume those plants, we will be healthy, but the opposite is true as well. And so that's how we've kind of gotten askew. Modern agriculture has focused so much on yield over the last 70 years that we forgot flavor and nutrient density. Now, because we're so sick, we're going back and looking at that and saying, maybe that wasn't our best effort.
Well, I think, people in general look at food as you said, flavor, which is important. And that's really important. But they also look at it as calories. And it's much more than that. Food has, like you said, so many nutrients in it, just like the soil. And that's a reflection of what's in the soil is going to be in our bodies. Now, and the segue from that, it's really interesting because I'm really big on the gut microbiome, the bacteria living inside of our gut. Now, our soils have bacteria living in them, but unfortunately, because what we've done in agriculture, modern agriculture, we've destroyed so much of the microorganisms and the soil is dead. Could you address that for our audience?
Well, that is true. In most conventionally farmed agricultural soils today, you have an extreme deficit, not only in mineral density, but also in biological life. The most conventional farms focus on NP and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. The cheapest form of nitrogen today that a farmer can put on their field is actually, and there's a lot of it done in this part of the country, primarily on ground where they're going to grow corn for grain, is to use something called anhydrous ammonia. If you've ever seen a farmer out in the field pulling what looks to be a propane tank around, that's anhydrous ammonia. It is very dangerous for the operator, but also even for the soil biology. What that does is releases native nitrogen through a gas exchange process, but it's ammonia. And if you look at any household cleaner under the kitchen sink, most of them contain ammonia because it's 99.9% effective at killing bacteria. Well, it's killing soil bacteria as well. And so some of the things we've done using petroleum-based fertilizers, it's just been detrimental to the ecosystem that is the farm.
Yeah, Bob, when people, I've gone to many farms that are conventional farmers, and you go and you dig a little bit inside the dirt. There's no worms. There's no night crawlers. There's no microorganisms there. How is it different on the soils that you grow food in?
Well, that's actually one of the things that we look at. One of the parameters, one of the measurements we use is we take a 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot square, and we will dig that soil down 12 inches. So it's a 1 foot cube, and we'll actually count the earthworms. That is one of the indicators for us to healthy soils. Now, we do a lot of other laboratory tests as well. We'll also do water infiltration rates. We'll take a 2 foot diameter ring and we'll pound that down into the ground. We'll put a known quantity of water inside of that ring, and we'll time how long it takes for that water to infiltrate into the soil. Living healthy soil has greater water holding capacity, but it also will give up water as well. Water infiltrates it quickly when there's porosity there, when there's air there, which are formed by the earthworm channels. So everything tends to either work in a positive direction or in a negative direction.
I would imagine, Bob, that what you just described also influences how the uptake of nutrients are going inside the plants, how the plants uptake the nutrients.
You know, when I was at Ohio State back in the 80s, they taught us that roots of a plant were to hold the plant upright, to take in water and nutrients. And all of those things are absolutely true. The root of the plant does those things, and it does them quite well. What they never talked about was what comes out of a root. You know, we talk about photosynthetic efficiency. We talk about the plant's ability to convert light energy to chemical energy. But what they didn't tell us was that plants in general use about 50% of the energy that they produce from the sun. Well, what happens to the rest of it? It's actually excreted out through the tips of the roots to feed the microbiology that's in the soil. All of the minerals that are in the soil, we have plenty of minerals in the soil. They may not be in the right chemical form for the plant to take them out of the soil. The only way to convert soil minerals to the correct form for the plant to be able to absorb them is to be digested through the gut of that microorganism. That microorganism is only going to be in the rhizosphere of the root if it's being fed from the photosynthesis of the plant. So it's a symbiotic relationship.
Wow.
The organism is feeding off of the root exudates from photosynthesis, and then in turn converting minerals that the plant can take back up.
I've never heard that before. That is a powerful statement, and I think very few people understand that concept, and that's huge.
And Doc, we're still learning every single day. I had no idea that bacteria actually physically enters the root of a plant. There's a process called rhizophagy. It's being flushed out by James White at Rutgers. He's a professor there in plant science, and he's looking at the plant's ability to take in nitrogen-fixing bacteria into the root of the plant. The plant literally strips the nitrogen off of the bacteria and then spits the bacteria back out into the soil, where it goes and gains more nitrogen and comes back in. It's a repeating process. But if you think about that, what that really means is that healthy plants grown in healthy soils can actually have a probiotic effect because you're getting biology internal to the plant. We used to just think that beneficial bacteria was on the surface of the plant, maybe a spinach leaf that had a lot of deep crevices, or a lettuce leaf, even a tomato. You can rinse a tomato, but don't scrub a tomato, because the beneficial bacteria on the surface of that tomato is really good for us. And the bacterial flora in the soil, when the soil is healthy, mimics the bacterial flora of the gut. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, you know, that's an interesting parallel. I've never really heard that before. And, you know, the bacteria in our gut, when we give it the right food, when we give it especially the high fiber foods, which the bacteria have a frenzy over, they just absolutely love it. They actually then transform that food into what's called short chain fatty acids. And those short chain fatty acids then are compounds that have profound effect on our bodies, like butyrate. That's a short-chain fatty acid. The bacteria actually, they ferment the fibers, and then they spit back out this butyrate, and that butyrate then it strengthens our immune system. It protects the lining of the gut. It helps our brain and cognition. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So there's a parallel.
There's a lot of, you're starting to see more and more white papers on the microbiome of the gut and its impact on mental health. There are unbelievable parallels to what's going on in the soil to what's supposed to be going on in the gut. Unfortunately, with ultra-processed foods and foods that lack any mineral density, no fiber in the diet, we've just got the gut so screwed up that everything else starts to go haywire. The impact of healthy food grown on healthy soils to mitochondria health, it's down to the cellular level. And it's just everything is either greatly positively impacted or negatively impacted based on what we're putting into our gut.
Yeah, those mitochondria, let's talk about those for a minute, because those are the power cells, the batteries that give us energy. And when we feed it the right food that has the nutrients in it that the bacteria need, that our bodies need, then the body's mitochondria can then produce that energy that we need and be able to help us to stay healthy, keep our immune system strong, and help us to have great, better cognition, better memory, and not age as quickly, which, we're really an aging population very rapidly. And we're living longer, but the quality of life is really poor. And people are, we have 65% of Americans who are sick with a chronic disease, one chronic disease. 50% have two or more chronic diseases. We have an overweight, underfed, undernourished population. So this is what you're talking about. It all starts with the soil.
Right. Absolutely. We're not helping people live longer. We're dying slower. Yeah. And it's not sustainable. If you look at the percentage of our GDP that's going to healthcare right now, it's about 17.5% of GDP goes to healthcare. It got as high as 19% during COVID, and then it dropped back down a little bit. But most economists say when our GDP, the percentage of our GDP going towards healthcare hits 25%, our economy will collapse inward upon itself because it is just purely not sustainable. If you look at the amount of money that we're spending towards baby boomers in the next 15 to 20 years, it is not a sustainable system because we've just created a way that's allowed unhealthy people to live longer than, quite honestly, they probably should.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the connection between the economy and farming as well, because farmers are in debt. They're living year to year, and there's just no way for them to get out of that cycle unless they do things like you're doing, which is very smart. You moved in the direction which the whole population is starting to slowly shift towards thinking more about health, and you're providing people with what they're looking for, and there's a great demand for it. People are looking for healthy foods and with coming from healthy soils. So we're so thankful for farmers like you. I want to talk a minute, if we could, about what you do is called regenerative farming. Explain to us what that is.
So regenerative farming is really looking at farming from a different perspective, if you will, looking at total ecosystem function. You're very familiar with the term "do no harm," right? In agriculture, that is very true as well. In probably the best analogy for regenerative agriculture, and then I'll dive in a little deeper. Regenerative agriculture is when you realize that you did not inherit your land from your grandparents, but rather you're borrowing it from your grandchildren. And so understanding that everything that we do, from reducing the amount of tillage, reducing chemicals in agriculture, using cover crops, rotation, fallow, animal inclusion where possible, All of those things are helping build the resilience of the farm. Most farmers today don't recognize that they grow food because they don't have a direct connection to the end consumer to get that immediate feedback. Now, immediate feedback is always helpful in any business. It's just not always fun, because when we make mistakes, our consumers will let us know about that and expect us to correct it immediately. And we're grateful to have that feedback. It's also the difference between being a price maker and a price taker. If you're growing corn, beans, and wheat in a conventional setting, you take that to the elevator and you take what they pay. You don't really have a differentiation between your corn and your neighbor's corn. It's all just corn. Now, the corn growers, the soy growers, they're very, very concerned right now and want to be at the table to talk about how we produce food in this country. Now, I have a question for you. What percentage of agronomic corn in this country is for it goes to human consumption? You have an idea?
I would say maybe 2%.
2% is the right number. It's 2% of corn, 2% of soy, 35% of wheat goes to human consumption. So bread and pasta. The balance of that is going to ethanol is the number one. Animal feed would be number two. But if it's poorly grown corn on unhealthy soils and it goes to feed animals, then why should we expect anything other than that animal to be unhealthy? The first exposure I got to this was about 20 years ago. My dad sent me to a 3-day soils course in Minneapolis in December, taught by a veterinarian. And the first question I asked my father was, what did I do to aggravate you? Nobody goes to Minneapolis in December on purpose. And who takes a soils course taught by a veterinarian? The veterinarian was Dr. Dan Scow, and he studied under someone by the name of Dr. Kerry Reams.
Oh, sure.
Dr. Kerry Reams was a physician who 2/3 through his career stopped seeing patients and became an agronomist because he had made the connection from human health back to soil health. And he said, if we don't correct soil health, we will never get human health right. He also worked with someone, Dr. Charles Northern. Dr. Charles Northern wrote a white paper and read it into the congressional report between World War I and World War II, talking about the low percentage of men who could pass a physical for military entrance. That was back during World War I, or right after World War I, prior to World War II. Today, 77% of young people from 18 to 30 years old cannot pass a military physical. We haven't gotten any better. We actually got worse. Back to Reams and Scow. First thing Dan Scow said to me was, I'll teach you all the chemistry and the biology that I've learned over my 40-year career. But unless you have a relationship with the creator, you'll never understand it.
I love it.
That was the first piece of, first time I had heard that in a professional setting. And so the first 30 minutes of this 3-day course was a devotional each of the 3 days. And it was about opening your mind and your heart to understand creation and understand how we can positively impact it, or at the very least, stop negatively impacting it. And it really was the beginning of us starting to learn why what we're doing is important, from a fertility aspect, from a cover crop aspect, from a tillage aspect, understanding more and more all the time. And we're continually learning. We don't have this figured out by a long stretch. What we've learned, the biggest lesson we've learned over the last 40 years is how little we know. And once you recognize how little you actually know, it's the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah, I love that, looking at the soil from the aspect of it being a sacred element. You know, I think that's a beautiful concept. And that was something that you were fortunate to be able to be introduced to, because, you know, we look at, humans as being almost gods today. We think we don't need, somebody to look to and be able to give thanks to. We think it's all human potential in our minds. But when you look at what we have been given, we've been given this earth, and we've been given all the elements, and we've been given all these wonderful, beautiful bounties of food and everything that comes from the soil, the plants and the animals, and all those things. They just didn't just come out of nowhere, and they were designed, they were created. There was an algorithm. You can't, everything has an algorithm, so it's beautiful.
You can't create order out of disorder. This did not happen as the result of an explosion. Impossible. It takes far more faith to believe in evolution than creation. What I'm trying to do, I'm very, very fortunate that I get to experience my faith every day because I work with nature. Mm. What I'm trying to do is better understand it and understand how nature works. Regenerative agriculture is about working with nature versus fighting nature. It's about life versus death. In conventional agriculture, we use herbicides to kill weeds, insecticides to kill insects, and fungicides to kill fungus. It's all about killing things. In regenerative agriculture, it's all about expressing life. It's earthworm content. It's biological rhizosphere around the root. It's about how many native species of birds can you host on the farm. It's all about life and how we understand we work within that total ecosystem, the water cycle, the energy cycle, the mineral cycle. It was all perfectly designed, and then we came along and we screwed it all up.
Yeah, so you're basically, with regenerative farming, you're helping to sustain life, whereas the conventional farming is destroying life in every aspect that they do.
At its simplest terms, that is a correct way to think about it. Yes. Yeah. It's life versus death. Yeah. Which one do we think will sustain us more? That agricultural philosophy that's based around killing things, or the one that's based around creating as many living things as is possible that work together in harmony?
It's all about greed, isn't it? Because it's all about how much can we produce more. Let's get the farmer to produce more. Let's push them to do that, so that the farmer gets caught up into that cycle. So they have to just follow the suit, and they're in bankruptcy. Most of them.
You are going to see over the next 5 to 10 years a tremendous reduction in the number of farms in the United States. Again, we went through this cycle once in the 60s and the 80s, and we're about to go through it again. It's very, very unfortunate. You're going to see the number of farms in the United States continue to contract, and the size of farms continue to get bigger.
I'm not necessarily that's planned. My friend Al Couch believed that was a plan that was over time going to happen, and that it was developed from people who are in that position to say, this is where we're heading. They had this idea in their mind.
It's possible. I don't know. I kind of grew up in between the two. We're living it now, but the only thing that's allowed us to thrive is the fact that we went through this situation much earlier in the 80s. Our lending institution in 1983 encouraged us to find a different avocation.
Sure. Bob, I don't want to gloss over the regenerative farming concept, because I think that's so powerful of a concept. But I would like to know, and I don't have a clear understanding myself, and I've been involved with this for over 50 years, what's the difference between regenerative farming and organic farming?
Great question. I get it often. Let me start by prefacing my comments by saying this. The purest organic farmers who have been around for 50 years plowed some very, very hard ground for those of us today. They were ostracized in the community. They were made fun of. And all they were trying to do was grow healthy food for for themselves and for their market. I am not a certified organic farmer. We are not. Our farm is not certified organic. The organic certification process does no testing. It is a promissory note, if you will, that a certification body comes to the farm, asks a list of questions, makes sure that they're not using anything they shouldn't use, no man-made inputs. So no synthetic fertilizers, no seed treatments, no insecticides of a synthetic nature. Now, most people believe that organic farms don't use chemistry. Absolutely, unequivocally not true. They use fertilizers, they use insecticides, they use herbicides, they use fungicides. They are just all natural ingredients, nothing of a man-made sort. However, there's no testing of nutrient density. There's no testing of soil biological life in that soil. I don't believe in our situation that you can just removing the bad things makes it good. There has to be something else there. I'll give you this analogy. I'm not sure it's the absolute best one. My wife doesn't appreciate it. I don't drink. I don't cheat on my wife. I don't hit my wife. None of those things make me a good husband. They just make me not a jerk. If I just exclude negative things, that doesn't make it positive. You have to be intentional about what you do on the farm and intentional about what you won't do on the farm. I don't use Roundup. I don't use heavy synthetics. I still use some in a very limited way. I use a lot of the same chemistry that organic farms use, but I'm also testing my products. I send my product out to an outside lab and I do a 250 pesticide assay to see if I've picked up anything in the carrots and the spinach and the tomatoes that I grow from something I have done on my farm or something a neighboring farm has done, and there has been drift onto my farm. I have done that multiple times. I believe because of the biological activity in the soil that I'm growing the plants, and that processes out all of that negative influence from the environment, I've always gotten no detect on that 250 pesticide assay that I get from an outside lab. Every time I've done that test,
that's pretty impressive.
I have heard of and talked to people who had organic carrots and organic spinach that they tested, and then they came back positive for glyphosate. Now, I'm sure that those folks did not apply glyphosate on their farm. I would argue that they don't do that. They're good growers. However, glyphosate can travel up to 3 miles.
Oh my.
And if you don't have a biologically active rhizosphere around the soil, you won't process that out of the plant. You have to have that beneficial biological process happening. Compost is one of the most effective soil remediation practices that we have to clean up hazardous wastes. If you put good compost on a hazardous waste site and wait a couple of years, that compost will process that hazardous waste out of that system. The reason you don't see it used very much is because it's not very expensive. Hazardous waste cleanup is a very profitable process. It doesn't work very well. They scoop dirt up, take it someplace else, and just remove it from the area that it's in and place it someplace else. The biological activity will clean that soil up. It's cleaning up my soil. It's making my soil healthier.
Bob, how long does it take for compost to clean up soil that's got toxic elements in it?
I would say, depending on how much I have acquired land that was adjacent to our farming operation that had been conventionally farmed for 50 years. And it was a train wreck from a biological aspect, from a chemical aspect, and from from mineral and then also from chemical. With compost, cover crop, and biological inoculations, you can clean up a farm in about 5 years, but it's expensive. If you leave it to be done naturally, if I just planted cover crops on that farm, it would take 20 years to process all of the glyphosate and the resulting AMP out of that soil. 20 years.
Bob, how bad is glyphosate?
That's a loaded question. I would suggest that people that really want to dive deep on that research Don Huber. Don Huber was an agronomist at Purdue. Early on, when glyphosate first came into agriculture 30 years ago, Don was at the leading edge of doing the research. He couldn't talk about glyphosate because he worked for Purdue, and Purdue's agronomy department was funded by Monsanto. Follow the money. None of the research that they did that showed anything unhealthy about glyphosate ever was published. Now, Don, since he's retired and not counting on his income coming from Purdue, is traveling the countryside talking about the negative impacts. I don't believe, quite honestly, now I'm a farmer, not a doctor. I don't believe we have a gluten intolerance issue as bad as we think it is. 30 years.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just did a video a couple days ago talking about how many people will go to Europe and they will eat the gluten grains there who are gluten sensitive. And when they go there and eat the bread or the pasta,
they don't have a problem.
They don't have a reaction to it.
Why is that? What's different?
Well, there's several things, but you please go ahead and take over.
Well, what I think is the primary difference is that glyphosate is outlawed in Europe. It is not here. It has actually become best practice. The majority of the wheat, durum wheat, for pasta and bread grown in the United States is grown in the upper Midwest, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. It's a shorter growing season up there. When the wheat gets about 70% mature, it's actually become best practice to fly on glyphosate and desiccate that plant so they can harvest it quicker. But when they're spraying that on at 70% maturity, there are still leaves on that wheat plant. And so the glyphosate's landing on the wheat, it's landing on the berries, it's landing on the stem. But at that point of maturity, all of the energy from that entire plant is going and concentrating in that wheat berry. So we're taking glyphosate from all over the plant and we're concentrating it in the berry, and we turn that into enriched flour and make bread and pasta.
And in turn, Bob, what it's doing is that glyphosate is going inside of our gut and destroying the beneficial bacteria, which then, again, segues off of what is happening to the soil in your arena.
Well, what was glyphosate originally designed for? Do you know?
No.
It was a chelating agent used in boilers to get rid of free iron in pipes. The iron would settle out, and then they could flush those pipelines. But it's a chelator, and it chelates minerals in the plant that causes the plant to die. That's why it's a herbicide. Unfortunately, the negative consequences, Don has done a lot of work on that and cites a lot of work. If you want to know about glyphosate in humans, Don Huber.
Okay, I definitely will investigate that and see if I can get him to be a guest on the podcast, because he sounds like he's got a wealth of information to share. The segueing off of what you talked about, people going into Europe and being able to eat the pasta and the bread. There's a couple of the reasons. I'm not sure if you're aware, but when we make bread here in this country, we actually do it in a couple-hour process. In Europe, it takes about 12 hours because they do sourdough bread as well. And that's a fermentation process, and it takes hours to do. And of course, we speed everything up, and then we miss out on what nature provides. So that's another reason. And then the other reason is that we use in this country for our pasta and bread hard winter wheat, and they use primarily soft. And there's 50% more gluten in the hard wheat than there is in the soft wheat. So there's 50% less gluten. So there's a lot of variables, but people need to know that it's not the wheat, because wheat's not bad. I wrote a book, Bob, back in 2000s, probably around 6, called Carbs from Heaven and Carbs from Hell. And everybody was bashing carbs and getting on the low carb bandwagon. And I said, wait a second, this is not right. I said, people have been eating wheat and, grains for thousands of years. And I said, it can't be that is the problem. It's what we're doing to the wheat. It's what we're doing to our bodies that is causing all these problems with gluten. And lo and behold, it's starting to come out now. It's starting to be revealed for a lot of people experiences that it's not the wheat that's bad. It's not the grains that are bad. Those have been given to us as a gift to enjoy. We don't have to sacrifice eliminating those things and not being able to eat them. It's just, we just need to, first of all, heal our gut, which has been damaged by all the chemicals and all the poor nutrition. Heal the gut, and then give the body a time to rest, and then eat grains that are grown in soils like your farming techniques, and then be able to enjoy. And I've seen that with my patients over the years, that they've been able to go back to eating foods like the grains that they were sensitive to initially, but after we healed the gut and after we repaired all the damage that was done by the antibiotics, by the chemicals in farming, and getting them good nutrition, the body is restorative. It's self-repairing.
You remember I talked about the resiliency of the farm? The resiliency, regenerative agriculture improves the resiliency of the farm. It can take more rain, and it can also give up water. The resiliency of our human body is exactly the same mechanism. There are so many parallels to how soil and plants grow to how humans interact as well. And if we get the soil right and the plant right, we'll get the body right.
So what do you see for the future of regenerative farming in this country? What do you see about, in just general, what is your vision for what's going to happen with farming in this country?
Well, certainly we hope that there's an explosion of growth, because I believe that you can grow healthier food that will command a premium. It's about impact. It's about the impact and how that food helps. There's going to be a time where you look at the quality of the food that you're growing, and you take that all the way through to the impact that you have on the human being.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Bob, you also have an interesting facility that you're involved with, that you've actually developed, called the Chef's Garden. Tell us about that. It's really a really interesting concept you've developed.
Sure. Well, Dad was a wholesale vegetable grower back in the 70s and 80s, and he was growing for large grocery chains. In the early 80s, we lost that farm. We started over. Dad's last year was 1983. He was 1,200 acres. In 1984, we were 6 acres. It was large volume, very low margin, wait for your money. It was economics 101. It just didn't work. At the beginning of our conversation, I said agriculture is broken economically and agronomically. That economic funding model that's still used today is farmers go to the bank in the winter and they borrow operating capital so they can buy seed, they can buy fertilizer, they can buy equipment, they can pay rent. They farm all year and hope that they can pay that note back Then they go back in next winter and borrow money again. You're 2 bad years in a row from non-existence.
They're trapped.
You're trapped, and that's why there's such tremendous pressure to increase yields, is because we pay farmers on yield, not quality. And so they're forced to try and grow more and more bushels per acre to make that payment so they can do it, turn around and do it again next year. There's just, it is a trap, and it's not sustainable. If we can grow healthy food on healthy soils, command a premium, we can get out of that trap. We started going to farmers markets, much lower volume, higher margin, cash. Cash is king. That was a difference in the model for us. On 6 acres, we were growing for farmers markets and a roadside stand. At the farmers market back in the 80s, we met chefs. And we met chefs who wanted good fresh food but couldn't find it. Their normal purveying chains couldn't supply a decent amount, a consistent supply of high quality product. So that's what we set about trying to do. And over the last 40, 45 years, the chefs have said, hey, if you're growing lettuce, would you consider growing tomatoes for us? Okay, so we added tomatoes. Okay, you're growing lettuce, now you're growing tomatoes. Would you grow basil? Okay, we'll grow basil. And we have added and added and added to that product line where, in all honesty, this is the chef's garden. We are custom growing for chefs all over the world. And they have taught a bunch of dirt farmers the food business. We didn't know we were growing food, but now we do. And we understand that we have a social responsibility to do that to the very best of our ability. We want to help people. Sometimes it's a chef and providing fresh product that we harvest today and is on a plate tomorrow helps make that chef's job easier. If it's to someone who's having a health crisis in their life and they need to change their diet, we can help them.
Now you have a facility that you have where people can come to the Chef's Garden facility, and you've got workshops and seminars. Talk about that.
Well, we have a roadside stand. It's called the Farm Market at the Chef's Garden. If you Google Chef's Garden, you'll see about the farming operation. You'll see about the Culinary Institute. You'll see about the retail farm market and home delivery. If you don't live close enough to us where you can drive to us, then we'll ship it to you. Just go on the site, find the product you're looking for, find the box. There are curated boxes, or you can order a la carte and get whatever you'd like. And we'll grow it, package it, and ship it directly to your door. We do have a retail farm market, which is where we met. And people come from an hour, 2 hours away to come to the farm to get nutrient-dense food. We do cooking demonstrations. Last week, we had a registered dietitian in talking about she was doing some cooking demos as well. We have some of our staff that talks about soil health, that talks about seed, talks about cover crop. My son, Zach, is growing 5 different varieties of heritage grains. He's growing those organically. We're not certified organic, but he's growing those heritage grains organically so that people can, and then we have a local miller who will grind that wheat for us. You can buy it in the whole berry and grind it yourself, or you can buy the flour that is stone ground. There's a difference between stone ground and steel cut. But yeah, there's just.
Yeah, but you also have the facility where people could come and experience for a day, and they could really get all these delicious foods and learn about how to prepare them. Talk about that.
The Culinary Vegetable Institute is located about 3 miles from the main farm. There's a full culinary staff there. There's an Airbnb place where you can stay there. You can take cooking classes. You can come to private events. It's all about how to better understand utilizing the food that we grow here on the farm. That's what it was designed for. It's a marketing effort to teach chefs. We get probably 500-600 chefs a year that come and visit us here at the farm.
Wait a second. See 500 to 600 different chefs come to visit your farm
every year. Yeah,
they
come to the farm and they want to see how the vegetables are grown, packaged, and shipped. And then, as you can imagine, when you bring a chef through this farm and they're going through the fields and they're going through the greenhouse, I see plants and they see plates and they want to cook right now. So when they're done going through this tour of the farm, they go to the Culinary Institute and we just turn them loose and let them cook.
What are some of the famous chefs that you come to visit your farm?
We've been extremely blessed over the last 40 years to develop relationships with these chefs. Some of the chefs that your audience might recognize would be Thomas Keller, Danielle Boulud, Jose Andres. Those are some of the people that they might, Emerald, Wolfgang. Those are all people that have been here on the farm. We have a great relationship with Rachel Ray. We have a cooking show called The Chef's Garden that's coming out in March that Rachel Ray produced, her film crew, and it's a 10-episode series where it is our chef customers coming to the farm to pick a specific ingredient. Then they go into the Culinary Institute and they create a dish out of that ingredient. Wow. It's a great way for your listeners to see that. I can give you the information there to link that.
If I had a hat on right now, my hat would be off to you, what you guys have done. That is quite impressive and quite necessary. And people need to appreciate all the time and effort and love that you guys have put into this operation. And we're so thankful. I'm so blessed to be living in this area with your farm. I get to go there. I love to eat the vegetables. They taste so much better. And one of my favorites is your microgreens, but the salad that I forget what it's called, but I just pick it up every time I just grab it. It's got all the various herbs and microgreens and other things that are, what's that called? It's really delicious. I don't put any dressing on it. I just eat it.
We call it a superfood blend. And what we did was we looked at USDA's website to look at the highest nutrient containing vegetables in descending order. And we've got as many of those top 10 in that blend as we possibly can.
I don't even put a dressing on it. I just eat it plain. It's so delicious.
Well, the thing we like about the microgreens is it has such a utilitarian value. You can eat it right out of the container. You can put it on a salad. You can put it on pasta. You can put it on a sandwich. And the bioavailability of the nutrients in the microgreen are 10 to 40 times greater than their full-size counterpart. Mm-hmm. So you get a really potent, packed, nutrient-dense package in that microgreen. We're growing micro broccoli and micro radish for cancer patients. The glucosinolates in the broccoli, the myronase in the radish, when you chew that and the saliva starts to break that down, the body forms something called sulforaphane, which is a natural chemoprotectant.
Yeah, food is best. Food is the best medicine. I keep on telling that people over and over and over again. God has put in all these wonderful plant compounds that are just like medicines. If we eat them every day, they're not harsh compounds. Well, they're gentle and they work over time.
God gave us everything we needed. When we got smarter than him or thought we were and tried to change his creation, that's when we got it all messed up. It's really where we went off the rails.
Bob, okay, we're just about running out of time. I would like to know, what's your hope for the future generations of people, children, that are living? What's your hope for them?
Well, we want people to be healthy. We want people to enjoy life. We want people to slow down a little bit and smell the vegetables. It's not just the roses. I want the next generation of my family to be able to thrive in agriculture. I want there to be a reversal of the trend where there are more and more farms with younger people that are growing regeneratively for the benefit of all of us.
What would you say, in closing, what would you say to a conventional farmer right now that is caught into that trap that we talked about earlier, and it's because of money that they're trapped in that cycle, what would you say to them? How can you help them?
Well, there are a lot of really, really good people, good, well-intentioned folks who have been farming their whole lives. There may be a better way. Be open-minded, open your mind, open your heart. There might be a better way than the way that our parents and grandparents taught us. It's okay to learn new things. We don't have to just continue to do things because it's the way we've always done them. The greatest compaction layer on most farms is between the grower's ears.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, Bob, thank you for all of the time that you shared with us today and the insights, things that I learned today that I didn't know about. I really appreciate it. I've been doing this for a lot of years, but you learn something new every day, and we appreciate all that you're doing, and good luck with all your future ventures.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We love what we do. We hope it shows.
Take care now. If you found this video helpful, please do me a big favor. It'll only take you just a few minutes. Like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to my channel, tell your friends about us, because we're helping one person at a time to live an independently healthy life. So until next time, here's to your health.